Hey there, greetings to my people from here at the Great Start Studio, where all of my drumming dreams are coming true. It's true. So this is where I'm shooting a video of the entire instructional series here in the studio, the 13 volumes of the London's Great Start Drum Set series. It's printed and the Kindle versions are available on Amazon as well as on my website, which is London's Great Start Drum Set. You can go there and check it all out. All my new videos from the studio will be available on that website for online lessons. Today I'm going to be talking about revealing some of my original drum heroes, what I call the Artistic Influence series. Drummers that I can actually see some of their playing in mine, that they've influenced me to that level. Drummers who truly changed my playing for the better, all the way through. There's some influence there in my actual hands and feet when I play. If in the studio, if I made posters of all the tribute, as a tribute to all the people, it'd just be every inch of every wall would be covered. It's just that these are the ones that have really, really influenced me in some foundational sort of way. So I made these posters as a tribute and a reminder of these great players. They're in my office. I'll be showing you. There's just too many to cover them all, but a handful that have really actually, I can see in my playing. There's so many great players who have inspired me in my drumming, but these are the select ones that have some way become a part of my style, my diversity, my teaching, my writing, and helped me develop my unique voice, which is a hard thing to find. You have to really listen inside. So anyway, enjoy the whole Artistic Influence series, and I'll be running them down, and I'll see you at the end. So next up on my office wall of poster drummer inspiration is Mike Mangini. Mike Mangini, for me, came on the scene about when he had a track with, actually 3 tracks on the Extreme album, Waiting for the Punchline. That there's a song on there called Hip Today, that is very nice, actually, constructed for Mangini's parts to play, especially when it gets to the break. When it gets to the break and Nuno's doing his solo, and the song's basically in 3 and like 3/4, and he goes through the solo and then he starts playing this phrase of it's like 7s across or something, and Mike is playing the 3 part and he picks up on the 7 accents, and I knew right then that there's a guy who has that thing that I'm always looking for in myself, of organization, where when the notes happen, you're above the mechanics of the kit enough to contribute in that way without letting go of the other part. So a lot of ways it's like having the clave happen and then you're playing against it, but the clave is still there. Or like with the Terry Bozzio, the ostinatos, and you have a limb playing or multiple limbs playing this repetitive phrase, and yet you still have the other limbs to contribute without leaving that part. It's a super weighty mechanical problem to wade through. There's no shortcut. There's no, it's like I had a professor and he was always talking about how you could drop the parts to a house out of an airplane from here until all of eternity, and it will never fall into that shape of the house. The wiring will never go, the thing of blah, 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 the such and such, and that's if you start with all the pieces of the house already constructed. And so he goes, these things are just too organized to fake. When you have parts that are that organized, it separates you from like everybody. And Mike has that. He has a bunch of other things that he has, but this ability to like play in a mechanical way on the kit, and I don't mean mechanical as in like robotic, I mean mechanical as in that he has already processed through all the mechanics of the drums, of how these notes line up, so that he can express himself. Once again, that is so attractive. We want that. And again, the quote, "We seek not the masters, but we seek what they sought." We're not seeking to copy them note for note and try to stand in their shoes and be them. We're trying to find out how to get to that point of expression that they have, so that we can express ourselves. When I heard that little tiny thing in Hip Today, which, by the way, I have a former student, Jeff Bowders, who teaches at Musicians Institute, and he has done a really great cover of that track. So it's very easy to see what's going on there, and he's an exceptional player as well. The thing is that right, I was about 95 when Mike Mangini hit with that, and it was about then that we had Virgil Donati as a clinician at the store where I was at, and I was teaching Jeff at the time, and Jeff was like, "Oh, I got these tickets to this Extreme show, and it's on the same night as Virgil," and we didn't know either of them, right? From either of them, we're like two new guys on the scene, and I go, "Well, how about if you go see the Extreme, and you can report back to me, and I'll go see Virgil, of course, because it's the store where I'm at, and I'll report back to you." And as soon as we got back to each other, we're like, "You're not going to believe what I saw." And he's like, "No, you're not going to believe what I saw." And I said, "No, you're not going to believe what I saw." This kind of battle of the you don't believes. And he goes, "You won't believe it." He goes, "Mike Mangini has a kit like yours." And I go, "What do you mean a kit like mine?" He goes, "Like a mirror kit where everything's doubled on both sides." I go, "You're kidding. I've never heard of that." And he had a Rototom kit at the time. And when he played, there's a video of Mike playing, I think it's at a clinic, but the Fire Garden Suite album with Steve Vai, he played something Bangkok, I think. And that tune it really shows how intense. I love that tune, by the way. And Steve Vai's got a zillion things to say for drummers to step into. It may not be the freest situation overall, because Steve's very dictative about what he's looking for in the parts, right? So from a composition side, it's not as free as like Terry Bozzio with Levin and Stevenson and Black Light Syndrome and projects like that. This is more, when Steve Vai does something, it's more the Steve Vai vision, and you kind of step into it. But irregardless, he has, Steve has songs where he's really reaching into all sorts of different territory, like he did with Kill the Guy with the Ball, with Dean Castronovo, all sorts of tracks like this. This is one of those tracks that allows Mike to step in and play all these crazy parts. Now, for me, it's unfortunate that those were on the Rototoms, because they don't sound as warm as regular toms. I would love to hear those toms all warmed up. But once again, he is playing parts that are just really fantastic. He wrote some books early on, and they're very kind of number-based. And I remember early on, somewhere along the line, Mike was saying something, he practices each side 200 times, and he had like this shortened number system so that he could kind of count them. And I was like, "Oh man, that's what I've always said." Like, you get a book and it says, just repeat until, basically until it's cooked, or it just says 20 times, right? Repeat 20 times or something. And I was always like, "Man, you got to repeat these things like 1,000 times." I do, once you come to terms that you have to repeat these things so much, you just settle in and go, "Okay, well, I'm on the long trek across the desert. I'm just going to do this way past, after 500, you're bored. And you're like, okay, well, I'll just keep running it down." And then you start thinking of these things in different ways. So I was really appreciative that he even said just 200. 200 is a significant amount, especially side to side, because you're basically processing the same note values, just physically playing them different on each side. Now, Mike's got his kit configured with two remote hi-hats on the side, and I've always had my hi-hat in the middle. And once again, I just don't know why you wouldn't have your hi-hat in the middle, because it's like cheating when you have both hands on the hi-hat. That's what it feels like, because mechanically, it saves all sorts of movement problems. Once again, Mike is expressing himself on this kit in all sorts of fantastic ways, and he's obviously was on the tryouts for Dream Theater, and they had a who's who of people trying out with that, and all sorts of drama about how that was done and whatnot. But actually, I think Mike was the best choice on that audition. Mike does this thing where he knows what he's trying to do, which is all this outside sort of work. But he also can do this thing where he steps into the role of what the history of the music was and serve, right? So he's got a real serve thing there. So, that's why they hire him, is because he operates in those ways, in a certain lack of selfishness. And so he's stepping into the role of all the work that Mike Portnoy had did, which is substantial, and then introduce himself basically in that context. And of course, it's a big gig. It's a huge prog gig. It's a huge money gig, of course, before COVID happened. And so he's got his legacy set if that continues. And he's done all sorts of work, of course, through Berkeley, and those guys are from Berkeley. He's an East Coast guy. He did work on I think it's LaBrie's solo albums previous to the auditions. He's just got a lot to offer, and they have he's a multi-sided guy. It's a huge inspiration to see that this is coming to the fore. I mean, I even saw, I know Bill Bruford made a whole thing that he retired, but there at the end, he had a mirrored kit that he started doing, and it's a totally different animal when you start thinking of it this way. So way back before I had the DW kit, I had Tama kit, which I loved, and we got flooded out when we had the flood. But I had bought a remote hi-hat in the middle and kind of had the toms configured down both sides as much as I could without doubling them. And that really just changed my whole thinking. But it wasn't all the way until 2017 that I had my idea. It's like it just hits you, a thought that you've just never had. And I love that quote, discovery is seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what no one else has thought. And it's hard to think outside of what has been. And so you almost have to just kind of sit in the water for a while. You sit in the water of all these ideas marinating, and then somehow creatively you just kind of almost unconsciously connect these things. And so I'm going to do a video on how that was and how I had my "there is no spoon" moment, like from The Matrix, if you've ever seen that. And then that set me on an artistic path that I was like, oh, this is my thing. This is the accumulation of all these different disciplines that I've been chasing. Mike is a huge inspiration of that. He's never let go of his kit configuration. It's gotten bigger, right? It's gotten more elaborate with the over-the-top octobans, and he's got a whole show type aspect that he has to do there. But he's actually very, very comfortable sitting and hardly moving. Very, very efficient if he wants to be, where he just turns, like I say, it's like the Olympic version of drumming where you just take one hand and you just go with one hand. He's extremely good at that. Of course, he's done a bunch of those fastest hand feet competitions and where they see how many beats you do in a minute or two. And really exceptionally great. I think it's kind of fun that he did the, I think it was Discover Channel, where they do the slow down of what visually it looks like when you hit a cymbal, or the slowdown of what visually it looks like when you hit the snare drum. And you go, whoa, you visually, your acuity does not pick up on it. If you get a chance to even see just a short snippet of that, because it radically changes the way you think about what a snare head does when you hit it. I mean, it literally looks like it does not move, but it does. And it's crazy. It just happens so fast that you don't pick up on it. So there's like this whole other world that happens on the drums without you knowing it. It was just great fun to see that, he was a part of that. So I really owe a bunch of things to Mike. The validation that there's like other people who were thinking, man, there is something to this mirrored thing, because the psychology of your hand wants to be on that side, and the psychology is the other hand wants to be on that side. I mean, I'm going to, like I said, do a bunch of videos on how I approach this, but you kind of have to look in the periphery. You kind of get used to looking at the hand as it goes down. And then you have a different sort of selection that happens, because if you want a 10-inch tom, you don't just go to the 10-inch tom. You have to say, well, which 10-inch tom? Which side am I going to? And then you have the question of, well, why am I going there? And if you can answer why, you'll be able to train yourself to do it unconsciously, because it'll be the most efficient hand. And that's the entire point of having it, is there's a certain trade in efficiency. So I'll be doing videos on that for sure. Mike is a huge part of validating that out in the world, and also that he stuck to it. Like, it wasn't like a fad, right, that he went through, and that he has done so much work with all these great artists. Nuno is an unbelievably precise guitar player. He plays drums. And of course, Steve Vai, the great Steve Vai. You can't play in those environments without really having your grid, your inner grid together, and a breadth of ability so that you can step into the roles that they ask you to do. That's why when I heard Hip today, I was like, whoever this guy is, he's got this thing of capability that he has developed. Now, I'd love to hear him do even more of that kind of stuff. I look forward to any material that Mike comes out with. He's one of the posters that's staring me in the face here from the drum set. And so, Mike, I really appreciate your work. I appreciate your dedication to the instrument, not just the industry, but the instrument itself, of what's possible. And I look forward to all the great work that you're going to do.